You are now tuned into Celeste the Therapist Podcast. Hello, my name is Celeste. Thank you so much for giving me a try. If you are new here, I want to say thank you so much for checking me out. What we do here is I talk about areas of our lives that we get stuck in. I talk about why we get stuck, and I help you shift the way you think about it by giving you practical tools. I'm all about using what you have, starting where you can. And I think a lot of times people tend to give up because they don't understand why they're feeling this things that they're feeling or why things are happening. And I find that the more educated we are about a topic, the better it is for us to create change in our life. If you are a longtime listener, thank you so much for sticking it out with me. I appreciate you. If you enjoy these episodes that I do me a favor, share it with somebody that you love. If you want a topic discussed, all you got to do is email me info@celestethetherapist.com. If you want to follow me, you can follow me everywhere at Celeste the Therapist. Also, I have a whole wellness center that I created called Shifting the Way You Think. And if you want to learn more about the Wellness Center, get involved, attend one of the classes, all you got to do is go to stwyt.com. Again, that's www.stwyt.com. All right, let's get into this amazing episode. All right, y'all. So today we are talking about building a mental health toolkit. If you don't know what that is, you're going to learn today. This is something that's so important for everyone to understand. One thing about me is I feel like I have a plethora of things that I can go to when I'm struggling. And I don't just go to those things when I'm struggling. I also work on those things on a regular basis. I look at it as like my medicine for living life. So I always give this example. I'll say, like, if you were struggling with diabetes and you had to take insulin, like, you're going to take it every day, because if you don't take it, your blood sugars is going to be off and it's hard to survive without your insulin. I think about most of us are living in survival mode, and we're trying to move into more of a living space where we're allowing peace, where we're allowing joy into our lives. But it's hard to do that if you don't have the tools to deal with life, especially because life happens, right? Like, you could be minding your business and so much is going on. And then what do I do? And so many of us have either frozen or we've learned how to self-medicate in ways that doesn't help us, and it keeps us stuck. And so my goal is to help you kind of learn these things that you can do. And so when you think of a mental health toolkit, I want you to think of it as something that is there, kind of like a first aid. I just thought about that. A first aid kit, right? Where it has the Band-Aids, the gauze, all these different things, right? That's there. I want you to have that, but also looking at it as like, this is something I'm going to go to on a regular basis. So we're going to go through the different things that I want you to think about having in your toolkit. And I want you to think about ways that you can work on implementing this, like now, today, right? Because my goal is to help shift the way you think. Use what you can, start where you can. That is so important. So self-care practices are so important, like things like exercise, what you're eating, right? So these are certain things that needs to be in your toolkit. Like, what am I doing with my physical body? How am I sleeping, right? What am I eating? And am I moving my body? So when you think about those kind of physical aspects of your day to day, make sure that's in your toolkit on things that you can do. When I work with people and I talk about moving their body, and one thing that they realize is, like, they don't always feel like doing it, but when they do it, they feel good. And so one of the things I tell them is that put it in your schedule, and those moments, because I have those moments too, where you don't feel like doing it, I want you to think about what's going to happen when you get it done. I think about like snoozing the alarm, right? And I've been guilty of snoozing the alarm, but I also, more likely than not, I get up and not snooze, because I recognize if I snooze this alarm, if I don't start first thing in the morning, because I have such a packed day, what's going to happen is I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to be working late. I'm going to be anxious or overwhelmed. And I don't like the way anxiety feels. I recognize it. I see how it shows up in my body. So for me, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I'm giving myself what we need. So when you think about that toolkit, ask yourself what kind of like self-care practices are in there, and like any hobbies, like what am I doing for myself to maintain? The next thing I want you to think about is mindfulness and relaxation techniques. This is another important thing that should be in your toolkit. One thing that we all have access to is breathing. And one of the things that I recognize I've gotten so in tune with is my breath. And I can recognize if I'm feeling like I'm running out of breath, or you see how I just did that? Like if I'm feeling anxious, right? Like I realize I'm not breathing regular. And when people come on the screen, when I start working with people for the day, and they'll come in with that energy, and I'll say, hold on, let's just take a break, because I'm so mindful and I'm in tune to it. I can recognize when it's not happening for people. And I'll just say, you know what, let's just take a deep breath. And they take a deep breath, and they're like, okay, like, right. Like that's something that we have access to that we're not utilizing. So really thinking about like, am I utilizing my breath, especially when you're struggling? Like, what can I do to help myself in those moments? One of the things you can do, if you're watching this, I have my hand up, put your hand over your heart and just taking a deep breath. Something, even just now, I just did it intentionally and it felt so good. Like it just allows my body to calm down. Sometimes we're so used to being in high alert that we're just like going, going, going. And this is something I would recommend you try to work on doing. On YouTube, there are these, you can type in a breathing circle, and you could type in 2-minute breathing circle. Literally, the circle will like breathe in, and then it goes and expands, breathe out, right? And you could just follow that, right? And I don't want you to, because some people may be like, oh, it's breathing. Like, no, it's not. It's like we're breathing because we need to breathe to be here. But are we breathing intentionally? Is our breathing labored? So many times we are so used to living on high alert that we don't even recognize what's happening. We don't recognize that our shoulders are up all the time. Another thing you can do on YouTube, they have these like 5-minute body scans where it literally will go through your entire body and says like, all right, like take a seat, and it'll say like, pay attention to where your jaw is, your jaw clenched tight, right? And you'll be surprised that your jaw's clenched tight. Even now, like as you're listening to this, pay attention. Like, are your hands balled up? Is your shoulders high up? These are like small things. And I don't want to, when I say small, these are little steps we can take, but they're significant, right? I want you to, when I say small steps, every step matters that we're taking to get to where we need to be. Right. And so if you can work on creating some mindfulness practices, even like a shower meditation, taking time in the shower to take a deep breath, smell the soap, feel the water on you, right? Pay attention to what you have going on for the day. What are you smelling? What are you seeing? Use your 5 senses and get engaged. I love the idea of a shower meditation because that's something that you're doing on a regular basis. So I'm not asking you to create more time, because I know for some people, they don't have a lot of flexibility in their schedule. And I don't want you to look at these things that I'm asking you to do as like one more thing you have to add to your plate. I want to think about ways you can implement it to things that you're already doing, right? So in your toolkit, one, we said self-care practices, right? And then we said our mindfulness, right? Like, what are we doing for relaxation? Like, are we making time to just sit down and breathe? Are we making time as we're sitting down, just maybe have a cup of tea, have hot chocolate, like listen to something that is very like relaxing, right? I can't tell you what it is. And remember, everybody's toolkit's going to look different. There's certain people I like listening to that might bother you. You might not like the way their voice sounds. So as you're thinking about this toolkit, think about like what's going to work for me, because we're all different, and the things that works for one person may not work for another. The next thing I want you to think about in the toolkit are your coping strategies. Like, what do you use when you're coping? And so this is like journaling. Do I listen to music? Do I get to talk to a friend? Because sometimes some of the coping mechanisms we're using are not healthy. We're engaging in relationships that like maybe in the moment it's comforting, but we recognize like the after effect won't be the best for us. Especially in the wintertime, you really got to be mindful on how easy it is to get caught up in some crappy relationships that may be causing you more harm than good. Am I like addiction, like marijuana and alcohol are legal. Well, marijuana in certain states are more legal than other states, but it's not about the marijuana or alcohol, but the way you're utilizing it, right? When I'm having a bad day, am I always going to the liquor store and getting a bottle, right? Am I always like lighting up, right? And when I light up, it relaxes me, but like I find myself feeling stuck. And for some people, it gives them what they need and then they're good, right? So pay attention to the coping mechanisms that you've been using now. So I want you to think about when you're stressed, like what do I do when I'm stressed right now? Right. And if it's working for you and it's not causing you any harm, I love that for you. If it's maybe working for you in the moment and it's causing harm after, I really want you to think about interrupting that cycle. And for some people, going cold turkey is very hard. But I want you to think about, instead of, let's just say, like my go to is wine. I have wine because some people don't look at wine as a big deal because it's like it's wine. It's not like, they'll say like it's not like a hard liquor. But as you're thinking about, like, let's say I'm getting wine every day after work, and I used to do that at one point when I worked in a high pressure place where I'm hearing all these stories, and I go, and this is before I understood how energy impacts me, right? Like I didn't understand like the heaviness that was happening and I was feeling was from all of the things I was listening to. And so like I would have wine, but because I worked in addictions and I'm a type of person, I pay attention to the way things work, right? I grew up in the hood and I seen like, yeah, like some people had nice clothes and nice cars, but I also seen like they were getting locked up or they were dying, they was getting killed. Like there was so many things that I paid attention to, and I said, it looks pretty and good, but I don't want it to end that way, right? And so the wine was fine, like in the moment, like I nothing came of it, but I wanted to interrupt that cycle. And I said, you know what, let me like go for a walk, right? I interrupted that cycle. So what I want you to think about doing, interrupting that cycle with doing something that you enjoy, that's in your toolkit. Like, do I want to color? Do I want to go for a walk, get some of this energy out? Do I want to go for a run? Do I want to listen to something? Do I want to take a hot shower? Right? Like, think about some of these things that you can do to help. I hope you're enjoying the episode. Quick announcement. I want to give you some ways you can support, right? I have two books. One is called Relationship Goals. It's a guide to a healthy relationship. I also have a guided journal. And if you find yourself stuck in thoughts, want to get your thoughts on paper, I ask you different questions and I also ask you how you're feeling. I provide you with the feelings chart. If you go to celestetherapist.com, you can find 365 days of intentional living along with relationship goals. Another way you can support me, I have this wellness center, whoop, whoop, that I'm so excited about, called Shifting the Way You Think Wellness Center. At my center, I do not want finances to be a reason why people can't get what they need. So if you want to donate a class to someone, please feel free to go to my website, stwyt.com, and you can give a donation. The classes run between $15 and $35. My goal is for everyone to be able to access these services regardless of finances. So if you can donate, please donate to your girl center. Appreciate it. All right, y'all, let's get back into this amazing episode. The next thing in your toolkit I want you to think about is, what are my supports, right? And this could be tricky for some people because some people may not have the supports like other people have. And what I mean by that, someone that you can talk to, like who's your go-to person? Pay attention. You may say like, yo, I got go-to people, but are those go-to people helpful? Right? Because sometimes people are only able to give you what they understand or what makes sense for them. And so like, let's just say that you're struggling with like trying to work on being an entrepreneur, right? And you're going to somebody that works a 9 to 5 and has no desire to be an entrepreneur. Like it's not even in the cards for them, which is fine. Like it's not the road everyone wants to go down. You're talking to them about it and they're like, man, I don't know. That don't make no sense. Da, da, da. Like if it feels more discouraging, maybe they're not the best people to talk to about it, right? And that's okay. It doesn't make them bad people, but they're not people that you can go to for this. Maybe if there's something else that you can go to them for, that's great. But pay attention to who you're talking to and how you're being affected by it. Sometimes we're so used to having certain people in our lives and going to them for everything that we don't realize like it's a hindrance to us. And again, it's not about them being bad people, but they don't have the skills or the mindset that you need to take you to the next level that you're trying to get to in life, whatever that is. So whether it's friends, family, it could be your therapist, it could be somebody from your church or wherever your spiritual practices is, right? Sometimes it could be a coworker, right? There's people in our lives that are good people that we may have a reciprocal relationship with that we don't realize, like, oh yeah, that's right, I can't talk to them. I've spoken to people over the years and they'll talk about these different people in their lives, aunts, like, and I'll be like, oh, well, why didn't you talk to so and so? They was like, dang, I didn't even think about that, and so I want you to have this somewhere, like, you know what, I do have some supports, because when you're struggling, I promise you, your mind will play tricks on you and you will forget to dig into that toolkit. But if you have it somewhere visibly available to you, you can go to it, right? The next thing in your toolkit, I want you to think about resources and tools. Like, so whether it's Celeste the Therapist Podcast, right, is a resource, because what I do is I help you shift the way you think, right? And I have over 400 episodes. Like some people say, like when they're struggling, they'll just pop on an episode, right? They'll listen to, I have a ton of interviews that I've done over the years, a ton of solo episodes. So podcasts are a great resource. Books are a great resource. I've learned so much about mental wellness, about the body, about being still from books, not from school, but just from my own like reading for pleasure, right? They have so many self-help books. That's why I say it's not the lack of information available that's keeping us stuck. It's like, how do we apply it to our life in real time? Right? Because sometimes it can feel like a lot. It can feel like, is this really like possible to happen? So really being mindful. So books, we're talking about podcasts, maybe some videos that you can watch, like some information that can help you really think about things in a different way. But those are things that I listen to on a regular basis. I'm always listening to somebody that's motivational, listening to podcasts. I'm always reading, right? I'm allowing my mind to expand, because if I don't do that, and if I just allow social media, the news, like the negativity that happens in this world today, if I allow that to be the only information that my mind is absorbing, life gets really challenging and hard, because that's the only thing my mind has to look forward to. But if I'm constantly feeding myself new information, my mind has a different way of thinking and looking at things. And I don't think we realize the conversations we have, the things that we're listening to, like how they affect us really deeply. So we got the resources. So let's just start from the top, right? So we are talking about what we can do to put in our toolkit. We got our self-care practices. That's one. We got mindfulness, like what are we doing to stay mindful and present, and how are we using that to help us with relaxation? We got our coping strategies, like what are we using to cope when we're struggling? And then in our other part of our toolkit, we have our support systems. Who are our go-to people that we can talk to when we're having a hard time? And then we got some resources and tools like books. We talk about podcasts, maybe YouTube episodes, things like that. And so goal setting, right? I want you to think about, as you're setting these goals to work on these things, please be realistic. If you're not getting out of your house and you say, you know what, I'm going to start going for a walk 7 days a week, be realistic with yourself. That's a lot, right? Because if you say 7 days a week and you get out 1 or 2 days, you're going to feel discouraged. You're going to be like, oh, can I really do this? I'm starting off with 1 or 2 days. Like, it's okay. And I think, I know people really want to change, but sometimes we set our expectations so high that we don't give our brain the confidence that we can do it. When people struggle with consistency, I'll tell them, let's just start with making up our bed. And somebody who makes up the bed every day may be like, oh, that's not a big deal. It's a huge deal, because if you're not already making up your bed every day and you start making up your bed, guess what? Your mind is like, oh, shoot, like I can't be consistent. I've been doing this work for a long time. I see it happen all the time where people are finding themselves feeling hopeful and confident from the little things that they are trying to do to help build themselves up. So I really want you to think, as you're on this journey of trying to like work on taking care of yourself and building this toolkit, Don't look at things that you're doing as slow. It's not a big deal. Big up yourself, like represent, like celebrate yourself, celebrate those goals of how you're making things work, because it's so important. And if you don't celebrate yourself, the one voice that really matters, because you're with yourself 24/7, Celeste the Therapist Podcast is not in your ear 24/7, but you are. If you can make that voice count, I promise you it would be so, so good for your mental health, right? So pay attention to that. As we're closing, right, we just talked about the different things that you should have in your toolkit. I want you to think about, where am I going to place this, right? Whether it's digital, right? Like something you create. There's some creative people out here where you put it together and you're looking at it every day, whether it's physical, right? You're writing it out. You're putting it on your mirror. It's a screensaver on your phone. It cannot be something that's going to collect dust. You need to have touch points. Meaning, when I say touch points, like where you have access to it on a regular basis. Like in my office, if you are watching, I have like motivational quotes on my wall. It's from my guided journal, 365 Days of Intentional Living, and I'm big on quotes. I'm big on affirming, and for people to see things a certain way, because guess what? Their mind is absorbing it. And so you can listen to this podcast and be like, oh my gosh, that's so good. I want to do that, right? You can listen to it and say that, but then, like, unfortunately, the world is not cheering you on to be healthy. And they want you to buy something. They want you to feel insecure. They don't want you to do the things that where you're empowered. Because if you're so empowered, you don't have to spend money. And so you have to be intentional about the process of building out your toolkit and making sure that you're giving yourself what you need, right? That's so important. So I really want you to think about that. As we close, I really want you to be patient and flexible with yourself. Have grace with yourself as you're trying this out. Don't let this be the last time you're thinking about your mental health toolkit, right? I want you to really embrace this idea. And if you want to share, like, I would love to hear from you and hear like what you are doing to build your mental health toolkit. I'm actually having a vision brunch party at the end of the year. So if you are in the Massachusetts area and want to come, where at the beginning part, I'll talk about the different areas of our lives and how you can think about working on creating goals in those areas in a very intentional way. If you want to come, if you go to stwyt.com/events, you'll find the event there. I'm so excited about it. I want to make it now that I have my own space, I want to make it a quarterly thing every 3 months where we're checking in, because I got this space around the end of the year. So it just so happens that it's the end of the year. So I don't think that we should just be looking at our goals around December going into January. I do think we need to be touching it on a regular basis. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely, like, I would love to have you here. So I want you to know that you have power to create change, but you have to have faith to believe in yourself, right? So if you have faith and you start believing in yourself, I always tell people no one can take that away from you. So if you want to learn more about me, you can go to celestethetherapist.com. If you want to learn more about my wellness center, you can go to stwyt.com, and that stands for shifting the way you think.com. We're located in Stoughton, Mass. And if you want to have a wellness prevent, we have space for that. So I'm really excited for the opportunities and the things that are going to be coming up. It's very nerve-wracking. Like, I feel nervous about it, but I also feel so excited. And if you don't know that nervous and excitement feeling, it can feel the same. So I'm definitely like reframing it in my mind to help me settle down. So thank you so much for listening to me and rocking out, and I will talk to you later.